When was the last time you looked into the mirror, smiled softly, and whispered to yourself, "I love you"? Take a pause, think carefully. We say "I love you" to our partners, to our children, to our parents, even to our pets. We post it on social media, we write it in birthday cards, we sing it in songs. But when was the last time we said it, truly, sincerely, to the person who has walked with us through every storm, every failure, every sleepless night, and every victory? That person is none other than ourselves. The truth is, most of us have never been taught how to love ourselves. From childhood, society tells us, be kind to others, respect elders, love your family. These are noble values, but rarely are we told, be kind to yourself, respect yourself, love yourself. In Buddhism, compassion begins at home, not the house we live in, but the home within, the heart, the mind, the fragile yet beautiful being we call myself. Without self-love, compassion for others becomes incomplete, sometimes even impossible. The Buddha understood this deeply. One cannot pour from an empty cup. A lamp can only give light when its flame is nourished. Yet in modern life, we are quick to criticize ourselves, to condemn our mistakes, to wear the heavy armor of shame. We compare our lives to others, forgetting that the flower does not compare itself to the mountain, and the mountain does not envy the flower. Each simply exists beautifully in its own way. This teaching, learn to love yourself, is not about arrogance, nor about inflating the ego. It is about rediscovering the sacred truth that you are worthy of kindness, worthy of forgiveness, worthy of peace. It is about understanding that self-love is not selfish. It is spiritual responsibility. Today, together, we will walk through 4 essential lessons drawn from Buddhist wisdom, life itself, and the countless stories of people who dared to embrace their imperfections. Each lesson will not only be explained, but brought alive through vivid examples, from nature, from human struggle, from the quiet resilience of animals. At the end of each lesson, I will offer you a gentle practice, a small exercise you can do not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. Because transformation does not happen in the future. It happens in the present. So let us begin. Lesson 1: do not believe in labels. Have you ever noticed how easily we put labels on ourselves? I am shy. I am lazy. I am a failure. And sometimes even worse, I am unlovable. These words are like stickers we paste on our soul. Over time, if we are not mindful, we begin to believe the stickers are who we are. But the Buddha taught all things are impermanent. Identities, thoughts, emotions, they rise and they fall like waves on the ocean. Let me share a story. There was once a young boy named Daniel. In school, Daniel struggled to read. While other children flipped through books with ease, he stumbled on words, felt embarrassed, and soon his teachers and classmates began to call him slow. That single word, that label, followed him like a shadow. He carried it into his teenage years, believing that no matter what he did, he would always be slow. But years later, Daniel discovered a passion for woodworking. With patience and creativity, he began crafting beautiful furniture. People admired his work, praised his attention to detail, and saw him as talented. One day, someone asked, "How did you learn to do this?" And Daniel answered, "Because I was slow." Do you see? The very label that once wounded him became the soil from which his gift grew. He was not slow. He was patient. He was deliberate. He was capable of seeing details others overlooked. This story reminds us, labels are not truth. They are only perceptions, often temporary, often mistaken. To love yourself, you must peel off the labels that no longer serve you. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that the self is not fixed. In the doctrine of anatta, non-self, we learn that what we call I is actually a collection of ever-changing processes. thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions. Just as a river is never the same water from one moment to the next, you are not bound to your past labels. So here is the practice for this lesson. Tonight, take a piece of paper. Write down 3 labels you have carried for too long, perhaps given by parents, teachers, society, or even by yourself. Then next to each one, write an alternative truth. If you wrote, "I am weak," you might write, "I am learning to be strong." If you wrote, "I am unworthy," you might write, "I am growing in worth every day." Fold that paper. Keep it by your bed. Each morning, read it. Each evening, read it again. Slowly, your mind will begin to shift, because you are not your labels. You are the vast sky, while labels are only passing clouds. Lesson 2: learn to accept mistakes. Do you remember the first time you broke something valuable? Maybe it was a glass, a vase, a toy you cherished as a child. The sound of it shattering filled you with guilt. You thought, "I ruined it. It will never be the same again." But let me share with you an ancient Japanese art called kintsugi. When a bowl or vase breaks, instead of throwing it away, artisans repair it with golden lacquer. The cracks are not hidden. They are highlighted with shimmering gold. The object becomes more precious, more beautiful because of its scars. Mistakes in our lives are like cracks in the bowl. We can hide them, feel ashamed, or throw ourselves away, or we can highlight them with wisdom, compassion, and growth. Take the story of a baseball player in America. Let us call him David. Early in his career, David made a mistake that cost his team an important championship. The newspapers ridiculed him, fans shouted insults, and he himself considered quitting. But instead of giving up, David chose to train harder. He studied his mistake until he learned not only how to correct it, but how to teach others never to make the same error. Years later, he became a coach, guiding young players with patience born from his own failure. The Buddha taught that suffering can be the doorway to enlightenment. In the same way, mistakes are the doorways to wisdom. To accept mistakes is to accept our humanity. To deny mistakes is to deny our growth. Here is the practice. At the end of each day, reflect on one mistake you made. Do not judge it. Simply ask, "What did this mistake teach me?" Write the lesson down. Keep a book of golden cracks. Over time, you will see that your mistakes were not proof of failure, but proof of your courage to try, to live, to learn. Because in the garden of life, mistakes are not weeds. They are the compost that nourishes the soil of wisdom. Lesson 3: stop criticism. Imagine a garden filled with flowers of every color: roses, lilies, sunflowers, wild daisies. Each blooms in its own way. But what if every flower spent its time criticizing the others? The rose might say, "You are too plain." The daisy might reply, "You are too proud." Soon the garden would no longer feel like a garden. It would feel like a battlefield. This is what happens when we criticize ourselves and others. Instead of blooming, we wither. Instead of harmony, we create hostility. There's a difference between healthy reflection and destructive criticism. Reflection is like a gardener gently pruning the branches, helping growth. Criticism, on the other hand, is like cutting the roots. It kills vitality. Consider Sarah, a young woman working in a large company. Each day she looked into the mirror before work and thought, "My nose is too big, my body is too heavy, I am not good enough to be respected." At the office, she compared herself constantly with her colleagues. When they succeeded, she secretly felt smaller. When they failed, she judged them, thinking, "At least I'm not as bad as them." But soon Sarah realized she was exhausted. Her energy was consumed by judgment of herself and of others. She wasn't living, she was measuring, and measurements without compassion become chains. One day she met a mentor who told her, Sarah, when you criticize yourself, you train your mind to find flaws. And when you train your mind to find flaws, it will find them everywhere, in others, in the world, in life itself. But if you train your mind to find beauty, it will find beauty everywhere too. That conversation changed her life. The Buddha taught about right speech, one part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Words can heal or harm. When directed inward, harsh words can wound our spirit. When directed outward, they wound relationships. Criticism steals self-love because it convinces us that we are never enough. Here is the practice for this lesson. For one whole day, make a vow: no criticism, no judgment. When a critical thought arises, gently replace it with a word of appreciation. If you look in the mirror and think, "I look tired," replace it with, "My eyes show that I have worked hard and I deserve rest." If you are about to criticize someone else, pause and say, "May they be happy, may they be well." Try this for a single day and notice how your heart feels lighter, your mind calmer, your love deeper. Because the garden of life does not need more critics. It needs more caretakers. Lesson 4: Imperfection is beautiful. Take a walk in the forest. Notice the trees. Not one is perfectly straight. Some are bent, some scarred by storms, some with branches missing. Yet together they form a breathtaking landscape. Their imperfections are not defects, they are marks of survival. We humans often forget this truth. We chase perfection as if it were the ticket to happiness. But perfection is a mirage. Even the most symmetrical diamond has flaws. Even the brightest star flickers. There was once a musician named Thomas. Born blind, he could not see the notes on a page, could not admire the faces in the crowd. Many thought his life would be limited. But when Thomas sat at the piano, something extraordinary happened. Music poured out of him with emotion so raw, so beautiful, it brought audiences to tears. His imperfection became the very channel for his greatness. In Buddhism, we speak of anicca, impermanence. Nothing is static. To demand perfection is to fight against nature itself. A flower blooms, withers, and dies. A mountain erodes under wind and rain, and yet within their impermanence lies their beauty. To love yourself, you must embrace your imperfections, not as excuses, but as teachers. Your scars remind you that you have healed. Your fears remind you that you are human. Your flaws remind you that you are alive. Here is the practice. Each morning, look at yourself in the mirror. Instead of focusing on what you dislike, choose one imperfection and bless it. If you see wrinkles, say, "These lines show my life, my laughter, my tears." If you see scars, say, "This scar is proof that I endured and survived." Do this until you realize imperfection is not something to be hidden. It is something to be celebrated. Because life is not a sculpture carved in marble. It is a river, flowing, bending, imperfect, yet always beautiful. Daily practice of self-love. Theory without practice is like a candle never lit. To love yourself is not just a concept. It must be lived, breathed, repeated. Let me share the image of an old monk. Every morning before the sun rose, he sat quietly on his bed. He placed his hand over his heart and whispered, "May I be kind to myself today. May I forgive myself. May I love myself." Only then did he rise to begin his daily tasks. You too can create such rituals. Here are 3 gentle practices you can try. 1. Morning breath of kindness. As soon as you wake up, sit comfortably. Inhale deeply and silently say, "I welcome myself." Exhale slowly and say, "I accept myself." Repeat 3 times. 2. Hand on heart. Place your palm on your chest. Whisper softly, "I love myself as I am. I am a work in progress, and that is enough." 3. Evening gratitude. Before sleeping, write down one thing you appreciated about yourself that day. It could be as small as cooking a meal or as big as forgiving someone. Self-love grows like a seed watered daily. Neglect it and it withers. Nurture it and it blossoms into compassion for the whole world. Conclusion: embracing the light within, the final step to self-love. We have walked through 4 lessons. 1. Do not believe in labels. 2. Learn to accept mistakes. 3. Stop criticism. 4. Believe that imperfection is beautiful. Each is a petal of the lotus flower called self-love. Alone, each petal is fragile. Together, they form the bloom that rises above the muddy waters of suffering. To love yourself is not to inflate your ego, nor to ignore your flaws. It is to honor the miracle of being alive. It is to bow before the truth that, despite imperfections, despite mistakes, despite scars, you are worthy of kindness. Remember, the Buddha did not become enlightened because he was perfect. He became enlightened because he saw reality clearly, imperfection, impermanence, and the boundless capacity for compassion. So, dear friend, as you finish this teaching, place your hand gently on your heart. Say softly, "I will not give up on myself. I will love myself, and by loving myself, I will learn to love all beings." This is not selfishness. This is the path of awakening. Thank you for walking this path with me here at Infinite Buddhist Teachings. If these words touched your heart, share them. For in sharing, you plant seeds of compassion in the hearts of others. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free.